Well, hello. How are
Ah,
you?
hi, good. I could probably make the greatest argument you've ever heard for why you should be a Christian.
Uh, sure. Are you for real quick? Are you a Christian?
No, believe it or not, I'm not, but I believe Christianity is true. I'm a Baha'i.
You're not a Christian,
So
but you
I'm
believe it's true.
well, sure. As Baha'is, we believe all the major religions are true, but we believe that the Baha'i faith is the universal unifying element between them. So we teach that Christianity is true, Judaism is true, Islam is true, but there's a unique way that you have to interpret these things to eliminate the contradictions.
What is the reason why we should be Christian?
So I'm going to give you the best argument. So let me talk at length for a little bit. If you're a rather precocious first grader and you are very well skilled at critical thinking, let's say your first grade teacher decides to try to teach you how to read. So your teacher sits down and she says, atheist preacher, or whatever your personal name is, these are the five vowels: A, E, I, O, and U. A makes the sound ah, and then you say, hold up right there. And she goes, well, what's wrong? You say, A doesn't make the sound ah, my mouth does. And you go, and she goes, no, just symbolically, A equals A. You go, but there's no logical relationship between A and A. That's just an arbitrary imposition on the language. There's no real connection between that. You just made that up, and that's entirely fictitious. She goes, and you go back and forth this way, and you're always falsifying, refuting the connection between the sound A and A. Now, you will be 100% correct. The problem is this: you will never learn how to read if you don't accept it without thinking. Now, how the religious epistemology of Christianity works is it's just like
No,
learning how to
I
read.
think you can think about it and still accept it.
No, what
It
I'm
makes
saying is
sense
that
if you think about it.
no, it doesn't make sense because it's entirely arbitrary and made up,
No,
and you
because
need object.
yeah, because the
Here's,
language is something that we make up, but sounds are
okay,
something that do
all
objectively
right,
come from our
all
mouth,
right,
and we
then if
use those noises to subjectively during that time
okay,
period create a
now
language for
fine,
each other. So it does
fine,
it does make sense thinking about it
okay,
that I would
fine,
use my mouth to say A makes a sound ah, and therefore
okay,
I can now
but that's not what I'm.
engage
That's not
in
what I'm saying.
society in language.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. We're saying the actual. You're saying she's saying the actual physical letter is the thing that makes the sound,
Well,
and
then
you're
that
saying
teacher is
that's
wrong.
okay. That's exactly
That's
what
not
we're
the way
going.
to explain language to the
Hold on.
kid.
All right. Hold on. Now understand that the word a in grammar is identical with the sound but not in the world of ontology, where there's a separation. So only in the world of grammar is a identical with but not in the ontological world where we live in space and time. So it has a virtual truth, but in and of itself, it's just purely something that human beings made up. So A is a made up. A to is a made up relationship that's perfectly artificial and not real. Now you cite this. You say the relationship to A to is perfectly artificial. It could have been an alif, it could have been an alpha, it could have been anything. But A is not necessarily related to It could have been anything, and you would be right. What the fundamentals of dogma are exactly the alphabet of the different concepts that you need to know inside and out before you can be spiritually literate. Now, when you're learning the alphabet, you will not know whether or not the alphabet is a valid way to construct a language until you know it and you can speak it. And then once you know it and once you know how to speak it, and then you could read and you can write, it becomes self evident that it's true. Similarly, you cannot criticize Christianity until you have a complete understanding of the conceptual dogma, which is its alphabet. And if you don't know that, you're not in a position to speak about it because you're a spiritual illiterate. Now, in order to understand that, you have to know inside and out the Orthodox theology because that's the alphabet of the Spirit. And until you can spiritually read, you cannot spiritually hear God talk because you're spiritually illiterate. And you cannot spiritually read his word nor read the meaning because you're spiritually illiterate. So the reason why minimally you should become a Christian is not because you know Christianity is true, but because you want to test whether or not their theology can result in you being capable of spiritual literacy so you can read the effects of your life and know it for yourself directly.
Yeah, I don't think that you have to be a Christian in order to do that. I think that I can be an agnostic
You
atheist
wouldn't
and
you
do
wouldn't
that.
know. No, no, here's the thing, you don't know the language. You don't know the language. You're not qualified to
Sure,
say that. You're
sure.
spiritually
I
illiterate.
understand what you're saying, but I reject that I have to be a Christian in any way in order
Yeah,
to
but that's from an
study this
illiterate
quote
point.
unquote language.
That's from an illiterate point of view for someone who doesn't know the spiritual alphabet. You literally can't spiritually read.
Well,
You're literally spiritually illiterate.
thank you for your opinion. How does this mean anything about having to be a Christian or why I should be a
So in
Christian?
this, a Christian is just somebody who's spiritually literate. You're a spiritual
That's not
illiterate.
true.
Yeah,
That
it's
is, you are
actually
the only person that has that definition.
no, it's actually Orthodox definitions. Protestants don't count because they don't know this theology.
A Christian is a Christ follower, one that
No, a
follows the
Christian is,
Christian.
according to Orthodoxy, a Christian is only Orthodox. Protestants protested against the original church. That meant they schismed off, and according to Orthodoxy, they follow the Antichrist.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for your opinion, but you have not shown me why I should be a Christian.
No, I didn't tell you why you should be a Christian. I gave you a good reason to be a Christian.
You didn't actually, but
Do you want now?
thank you for your time. Is there
Would it be
anything else
better?
you want to say?
I have a question for you. I have a question for you. Would you be a better man if you were spiritually literate rather than spiritually illiterate the way that you are right now? Because you're spiritually
I don't
illiterate.
know if I don't know if being spiritually literate is even a thing. So
Okay,
I don't know.
so
I
here's how
can't
you know
answer
this.
that.
This is well, here's how you can know this for yourself. You go to the Orthodox Church and you learn to read spiritually for a year. Until you know how to spiritually read, you're in no position to say whether or not God exists or doesn't exist because you're an illiterate and you can't read.
That's great. I don't make either claim, so I don't know
That's fine.
why you're
No,
saying
actually,
things
you
like
say
this like I do.
atheistic preacher. You're saying God doesn't exist and you lack the
No,
belief in God.
no. I lack a belief, but that means
That's
that
no.
I
So
don't
that's
know.
Victor. Do you know what do you know what Victor Stan? Do
Do
you know
you
what
know what
Victor
a
Stanley said?
Gnostic atheist is?
Yeah, I know what a Gnostic atheist. I know exactly what it is. We're talking about like
Okay,
the Buddha.
so then you understand that I am not making a claim one way or the other.
That's a contradiction in terms because I'm not making a claim as a claim.
No, I said I'm not making a claim that God does or does not exist.
Okay, saying that I'm not making a claim that God doesn't exist is still a claim. You're making a claim.
All right, man. I think you very clearly understand what I'm saying, and I think you're purposely
No.
trying to
No.
twist
What I'm
things.
saying is that
Are
you're
you going to
contradicting yourself and
engage
you're
in an
irrational.
actual conversation and actually respond to what I'm saying, or no?
Sure, but you actually have to use coherent logic and stop talking in self-contradictory nonsense.
I am. You see, Gnosticism has to do with your knowledge, whereas theism has to do with your belief,
I'm a Gnostic.
specifically in God or
I'm a
gods.
Gnostic. Hey, listen,
So
I'm a
being
Gnostic.
an
I'm a
agnostic
Gnostic.
atheist
I am a
means that
Gnostic.
I do not
I'm a
know if God or
theological
gods
Gnostic.
exist, but currently I hold no beliefs in any. That is not a
Okay.
contradiction in logic. That is just a plain truth.
I'm a theological
So
Gnostic. Baha'is are
so
Gnostic.
I
I'm a Gnostic.
am not
Hold
saying
on.
God does
Listen.
exist, and I'm not
Hold
saying
on.
God does not exist. So you saying, "Oh, but your name it says atheist preacher," that doesn't mean
Okay,
that I'm saying that there is no God or that we shouldn't be,
excuse me. I'm trying to
believing.
say something.
That
I'm a Gnostic
I know
also.
you're trying to say something, but you're trying to say something while I'm trying to answer back to you and explain something to
No,
you.
you cut me off
You
mid
are
sentence.
interrupting, and I don't appreciate that. So again, are you ready to engage in an actual conversation?
Did you know I'm Gnostic?
Did you hear anything I said?
Yeah, I did. It was all self-contradictory horseshit.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful day.